Hey, what's up, guys? Node Investor here. So we are seeing this June 6th date come upon us. There's a lot of people talking about it. I want to share my thoughts on what I think may transpire in and around the June 6th date. I'll go over what we are all talking about here, this chart that we're looking at here with this tightening pattern. But first, let's take a look at the coin market cap. Currently standing at $334 billion. We've seen a little bit of a pullback following the rally that we saw late last week. And here we are just kind of slightly pulling back. The question is always, is this just a retracement or is the downtrend resuming? And so I'll go over some thoughts on that. The altcoin market standing right at around that $200 billion mark. You can see the Bitcoin dominance number still sitting tight in and around 38%. It did peak as high as 39.89%, almost 40% there before pulling back a little bit. And here it is just slightly drifting up as some of these alts that were very strong last week are just pulling in a little bit here. But all around, we have seen the market sell off in the last couple of days. And we're going to go over some charts here, some of the better names that are holding up. We've got a handful of names that we want to pay attention to here should the market resume its uptrend. So let's take a look at the Bitcoin chart first. So these arrows that I've highlighted here, these are the 6th of every month. And there's been a lot of chatter recently about, hey, every 6th of the month, the market or the Bitcoin price sees a major pivot area, right? So we can see here on January 7th, we saw the first big down day after topping around 17.2 on January 6th. And then you can see here February 6th, we all remember that. That was the climactic bottom, the big washout low that we saw after the 70 plus 65% plus pullback from the January high. And then going into March, on March 5th, we saw the top there on a closing basis. And then on the 6th, we saw the reversal. And then finally, April 5th and 6th here. And then May 5th was the top on this recent rally, and here we are pulling back. And it just happens to also be building this broader equilibrium symmetrical pattern that we're starting to see form. And we saw the most recent low just last week here on May 29th when we had that rally off the lows around that $7,100 mark. So just below $7,100, above 7,000. And that was a must hold level. We were right at this retracement zone, right at this lower trend line. And so here we are coming upon June 6th. And the question is that going to mark a major low, a major swing point? Are we going to find a low and continue higher? And so I'll share my predictions and my thoughts there. But first I want to say that when everyone is looking at the same data point, when everyone's expecting the same thing, generally the market doesn't do it anymore. And so that's just something we've learned. Back here, very few people were talking about this. And now after this most recent high, everyone's saying, hey, there's June 6th cycle, or this 6th of the month cycle is happening. So now everyone's looking at this with a very bullish bias. And we have to just be cognizant of that the market generally won't do it anymore. And it may turn out to that this low that we saw here last week was actually the low, the pivot point, and now we're going to start heading higher. So going into the price action here near term, that's the level to really be watching here. Let me go to the 4-hour chart. Is this most recent low. If we continue to sell off here, this low around 7,100 is a must hold level. And that's because it's going to not only test this horizontal price support, but it's also going to run right back into that lower trend line. And we want to see that hold before continuing higher. So that's the thing to look out for if we continue lower. Now, it doesn't necessarily mean we're going to go down that far. And in fact, I'm thinking this is just a little bit of a retracement in this broader transition that we're starting to see. If we go to the daily chart again, I'm keeping an eye on this trend change here. And that's the key when, especially if you're doing shorter term trading, right? You always want to trade with the trend. So here the trend was clearly lower. So you were just going on a short bias or just getting out of the way completely. Following the April low, we had a nice uptrend that ran into early May. Since May, we've been in a downtrend. And you can see last week we broke out of this lower downtrend, right? We're changing the nature, the character of this recent price action. Doesn't mean it's the low, not necessarily, but you got to start paying attention to this shift that's happening. We've been in this series of lower highs, we've been marking this pattern of lower lows, and here we are rallying, breaking out of this trend, this channel for the first time. And if we make a higher low in and around this $7,300 mark, that's going to really mark a shift in the momentum, and then I'm going to be looking for some more upside. So what's my prediction for the 6th? I am betting that nothing's going to happen and we're not going to have a major climactic low or top. However, to play along, I will make this prediction. I'm thinking we're going to be higher by the end of the week than we started the week here. So I'm thinking we'll see prices over that $7,800 mark by the end of the week. I'm still looking for a retest of this, in and around this $8,000 mark. And so I'm looking for a little bit of a higher low here and then a test of that. But I'm going to take the same stance that Arthur Hayes took when he was on CNBC and say, at the end of the day, predictions don't matter. And he was absolutely right, because I'm not making my trades based on some prediction. As an analyst, you absolutely should look at, hey, what are the probabilities and what are some of the potentials? But at the end of the day, I'm taking my signals based on what the market's going to say and do. And so I'm going to go with that. But that's my prediction for now. Again, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter, because if we continue lower this week, this level, this 7,100 level, is going to be the key area to be watching. If we go back to the weekly chart here real quick, I'm going to take the lines off here. You can see we formed a green week last week. We're testing this lower, and so now I want to see that level taken out. That's another reason why I'm thinking we'll be higher than the 78 mark, but that would be a key continuation of this reversal, this potential reversal on the weekly pattern. So we've had this pullback, we had the nice rally, we saw 3 weeks of pulling in. Last week we formed a little bit of a reversal week. Now we want to see some follow through. We want to see a higher low here. We want to see this closing basis number hold, which is around 7,300, and now we want to see it take out and go above the 7760 mark or so, basically that 7,800 mark. So that's what I'm looking for on that weekly basis. And of course, on the upside, if we continue higher, the test is going to be this downtrend that's playing out right now, which is currently sitting around 8,900, 9,000. Now, a few names that are holding up well. Let's take a look at some charts here. So first off, looking at Ethereum, this is the daily chart of Ethereum BTC on Coinbase. And you can see we've had this pullback. We're starting to test resistance here. So I'm watching this level right now in and around that 0.08 BTC level. It's trying to get back up. We had a pretty good rally here. Let me put the volume back on here. We had a pretty good rally last week. Not a ton of volume came in. We had this pullback a couple days ago, and now we're seeing a retest of that, but it's still holding the shorter term moving average. So I'm keeping an eye on that. I want to see this thing take out this resistance. And Ethereum is a little bit of a bellwether for some of the other altcoin markets. And so if this can start to rally and outperform Bitcoin, that's going to be a good sign for the broader altcoin markets. Binance Coin. So here's Binance daily chart on the USD Tether pair, and you can see there's a very clear resistance level forming here around this 1530, 1520 mark. And so that's the level I'm keeping an eye on. It is looking really good. Usually when you see multiple tests to the upside by the third or at most the fourth test, it does take out that resistance level. So I'm keeping an eye on that. Versus Bitcoin, it is at new high territory. So looking at that, that's very important. We have been closing at new high ground. So you can see on a closing basis, this high was the new closing high, and then just this last week we're forming a nice little flag here. The moving average is just marching up higher, and so this is going into new high territory. I've been talking about Bitcoin, or excuse me, talking about Binance versus the Bitcoin pair, and once we break out with some solid volume above this high zone, that's going to really start to create some momentum. And I think a lot of this just has to do with a little bit of a pullback we're seeing in this market. And if the alts can get going again, I'm going to be looking for Binance to start making new closing highs again. ZIL, another name I've been watching here on this retracement. We're seeing a potential low being formed here. Now it's starting to get back above this shorter term moving average. We saw some pretty good volume a few days ago, and watching this price action and looking for some follow through. If we go to the 4-hour chart here, you can see this was last a couple of days rally, a little bit of a pause here. If it can get back above this little zone, then I'm looking for a breakout, and this will be confirmation getting above, let's just call it that 1700 Satoshi level there. So that's what I'm looking for, potentially a turn of the corner here on ZIL. Another strong name after this very good rally that it has. This has been a constructive pullback, constructive consolidation, setting a higher low. Now I'm watching for some follow through to the upside. Ontology, mentioned this one in my last video, and this continues to hold up well. It did finally break out of this downtrend on the daily chart here, and so far it's just been holding up relatively well during this little bit of a pullback. The daily chart still looks good. On the 4-hour, we're seeing some recovery show up here, volume starting to come back in, making a little bit of a double bottom on this retracement, and so it's still one that I'm very much liking the chart pattern, showing a lot of strength, showing a lot of relative strength in this overall market, and I'm looking for Ontology to make new highs as well if we can get going again. EOS. So EOS has been in the news a lot lately, a lot of activity going around EOS. We saw this breakout here a couple of days ago when it went live. Now we're seeing this retracement right back to the moving average, and I'm liking the pullback here, looking at this as a potential secondary entry on EOS. Again, holding the breakout points that we saw a few days ago. A lot of volume came in on this move, and you can see it's pulling right back to that point, finding a low in around there, and we're seeing some volume come in, so starting to move higher again. EOS USD pair is looking pretty good right here. And finally, Walton. Walton is seeing a little bit of action again. I've been watching this horizontal price resistance on Walton. You can see here for the last couple of weeks, just been bumping up against this level multiple times, finally breaking above it. This daily chart, this daily bar still has several hours left to go, so we'll see if we can close above it. But if it can close near the highs of the day here, that's going to be very positive, especially with the volume coming in. And so potential good low being established here on Walton. So that's going to be it for today, guys. Just wanted to bring that quick update. It's always fun and exciting to see the predictions and the markets and where this is all going. But at the end of the day, got to take the price action as it comes. Mr. Market, as they call it, is always going to be right. But it's fun nonetheless to kind of forecast and talk about where this could be going. But I'm with you guys, and I hope that we do see some positive action going into June. I expect that we will. Is it going to be a monster move like we saw in April with a 50% plus or 40% plus move in Bitcoin? Probably not, just because that weekly chart is starting to really tighten up. So I think the moves are going to get smaller in the near term with a breakout one way or the other going into July or early August. So appreciate you guys watching. Remember to hit that like and subscribe. And until next time, take care, everyone.